Well, greetings. It's author and attorney Kelly O'Connell with Knockout Radio, spreading enlightenment one podcast at a time. Hope you're well. And, you know, Dr. Fauci says you don't need to wear your mask outside anymore. And we got to transition to maskless, so I'm sure you're all ready for that. Now, speaking of which, today I'm asking a crazy question. I know it's crazy. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, believe it or not. But why did Fauci pay China for gain-of-function virus weaponizing? That's gain-of-function virus weaponizing program, when number one, it's against the law, and number two, he lied to Rand Paul about it. And since the Dems hated Trump since before inauguration and constantly tried to sabotage him with lies and misinformation, could they have directed China to launch COVID? I know it's crazy. I'm sure it's probably not true, but if you were writing a novel, would that be a twist? A freaking great twist? I almost said another word. Anyway, I also want to consider how Biden's failure makes socialism more likely each day, and if you haven't thought about that, I would challenge you to do so. So anyway, did the government slip-ups reveal to you the maneuver underway to establish statism? And statism is another word for growing the government or giving the government more power. It's socialism. And don't forget, Marx said first there was capitalism, and then capitalism turns into socialism, and socialism turns into communism. And I won't get into this too much, but there's a fascinating story about where these ideas first came from, and it was from a religious writer, Joachim of Flora, in the 13th century. And just a little biographical note here. He went to the Holy Lands looking for inspiration and enlightenment, and he got very sick and almost died, and he told God he would stop being a party boy. So being a priest, he came back. He was from Calabria, and he focused on interpreting the book of Revelations, which is, as you know, famously very difficult to understand. And so he couldn't figure it out. One day he went to bed very late, got up. The next morning he'd had a dream. In the dream it was revealed there's the time of the Father, and then the time of the Son, and then finally the time of the Holy Spirit, and that's all of history right there. And that they were in the time of the Son, and they were moving into the time of the Holy Spirit. And he proposed heaven on earth, and living as if it were in a monastery, all people together, but without the church anymore, because then you'd directly be interacting with God. And so the leftists inherited these ideas through people like Auguste Comte, and the leftism, liberalism, socialism, or whatever you want to call the Democratic Party, the way they see things, it's like Catholicism without a pope and without a God, and the state becomes the God, and the pope is whoever's in charge at the time, you know, these elites. So anyway, now, when you heard that Fauci had kind of casually said we don't need to wear masks outside, what did you think? Well, the way he said it made me realize that he had known for quite a while that that was true, and therefore he was covering up. Now, he was covering it up, but why? What would this guy have to gain? Well, I don't think he's really so much a doctor. He could be a great doctor, but I have no idea. It doesn't seem like he's so great. Remember, he initially stated that you didn't need to worry about masks, which in retrospect was kind of a crazy statement. And then he said, and we've got to start transitioning. So the game's over. But what was he hiding? Why was he pretending that you had to wear not just one mask, but two masks? And why did vaccinated people have to wear masks? That doesn't make any sense. And you think about all the other diseases that are out there, including the flu, including a lot of other things that you can catch from one another. We've never treated a disease like this. And so it made me realize there's something going on behind the scenes. And what's going on is in my opinion, this guy's very far to the left, and I say that because, number one, he's covering up for the government, but number two, was always trying to make Trump look bad. Or maybe he didn't like Trump, but on the other hand, think of the fact that Trump was fighting against the establishment. He was fighting against the fake news and the fake government and all this stuff. And what did he get for it? Well, he got for it before he ever went into office. He had the FBI spying on him, putting in false requests for information. And we've got this struggle between Trump and the state. Well, put aside however you feel emotionally about Trump and see Trump as a guy who's at some level, although he's in charge of the government, he's resisting government. He's resisting bureaucracy. And he's treating it as something that needs to be cut back. So Fauci is helping the Democrats. But think about this. Rand Paul also forced Fauci to admit that he had been paying, the United States had been paying NIH, had been paying the Chinese for helping to fund their virus clinic. And their virus clinic has a function in it to weaponize viruses. And so when they did that, when they were doing that, it was a very dangerous thing. That's why we don't fund it, because they could escape. But what if the Democrats told Fauci, we want to get a little bit of disease going, not too bad. Why don't we bring this thing over from China? And when it starts to get bad, Trump will look terrible. Well, it sounds silly, doesn't it? But doesn't the Russia investigation also sound silly when you find out that there was no foundation to it? 2 impeachments, not 1, but 2 ridiculous impeachments. They hated this guy's guts. They constantly lied about him. And even people that came in to help Trump, like Attorney General Barr, didn't go after the Democrats. Now, why was that? I believe it's because he saw the writing on the wall. He's a very smart guy. And he saw that whoever helped Trump was going to get in a lot of trouble. So even though they're talking about suing him now, Barr and his buddy, whoever his sidekick that was going to go after the FBI and all the other agents, they never did anything. And so he's part of the deep state too, if you want to call it that. So Fauci reveals that the masks are no longer needed, and yet you got people fighting in the streets over the masks. And you've got people, governors, Governor Cuomo, Governor Whitmer, Governor Newsom, who totally mismanaged the crisis, but what they did is they used it to get control of the economy, get control of small businesses, especially, restaurants and bars and stuff. So there's something going on out there. There's some sort of an agreement. Now that Biden is in place, consider all of the different things that are failing at the same time. Now, we shut down all these businesses, but the government gives payroll to these employees, right? And they're making more. They're probably making twice as much as they were. So now when the businesses are reopening, they can't find the skilled workers. So you've got all the businesses that failed out there, which let's just say it was 1 million businesses, many of them small, many of them family businesses. And then you've got the payroll replacement we just mentioned. And then gift loans, giant loans from the government that I don't think need to be repaid to keep businesses open. So now you've got these some of the more conservative people in the society, small business people attached to the government teat. Now they've got trillions in spending that they want to put out there, and I think it's $4 trillion that they're trying to do this year. And so now we've got this sudden spike of inflation. So the mismanagement of the printing press is basically printing all of this deficit spending when there's no reason, because the economy is growing like crazy right now. You don't need to put money into it, because that would be like, you've got a pizza oven and it's supposed to be 1,000 degrees, 800 degrees, whatever, and it's at the right temperature, and then you go and throw in a propane canister or a whole bunch more wood, double or triple the heat. That's what's happening to the economy right now. So what's the result, Kelly? The result, as we know, when there's too much money that's been loosed, and especially when it is deficit spending, it causes inflation. Now, it's challenging the dollar's global reserve status. The dollar, since the Bretton Woods Agreement after World War II, has been the world's reserve currency. That's why our dollar doesn't tend to go up and down like other currencies do, because the entire world is invested in us like a business. Now, as inflation spikes, who does it hurt the worst? The poorer you are, the more it hurts you, the more it hits your income and reduces it. So why is the government doing it now when we don't need it? Obviously, they want an outcome. They want to create a need out there, and the need is going to end up putting out more interest. So we've got low interest loans right now. We haven't had inflation like this for probably 20 years. Now you've got all these people marching across the border in Biden shirts, and so it's a new army of Democrats. While the military is divesting of radicals, in other words, conservatives, and educating soldiers into woke doxology, woke beliefs, critical race theory, energy policy is imploding. Pipeline was shut down. The Keystone was shut down. And then this other one, the Colonial Pipeline, was shut down through terrorism, economic terrorists. And then right when that happens, I just found out when I was looking at pipelines that Governor Whitmer is trying to shut down another Canadian-U.S. pipeline that brings in 500,000 gallons of fuel a day, if you can believe that. Right in the middle of this crisis. I mean, there's people in the East Coast that don't have enough gas. All of these gas stations are shut down. And she is trying, Whitmer is a terrible, terrible leader, but she's involved in this environmentalism, this attempt to supersize socialism in this country. All right. They've got another pipeline or two that they're trying to shut down. The one that's coming out of the Bakken. They're trying to shut that one down too, the Dakota pipeline. So you could shut down, between these pipelines, easily a couple of million barrels of oil a day. Now, what do you think that's going to do to American business, to fuel prices, et cetera, et cetera? You see where this is going, right? Now, during the same time, Governor Newsom, who they were trying to remove from office, he has stated that he's going to shut down the oil production in California. He's gonna kill an entire industry. California used to be famous for oil production. If you remember the Beverly Hillbillies, the story about the Beverly Hillbillies, and maybe the oil was back in Kentucky or wherever they're at. But remember the La Brea tar pits, which is in downtown L.A., is tar from all of the oil. So there's an incredible amount of oil in California, and they want to shut it down. But you see what happens when you go to green power, what happened in Texas. We don't have, during inclement weather, we can't use a wind, we can't use solar, right? So when you most need it, you don't have it. You got to keep oil out there. Now, Biden signed a deal with Iran, or is trying to get back into the treaty with Iran, and suddenly Hamas starts launching thousands of missiles into Jerusalem, into Israel. So what's that about? Well, Hamas is being given weapons from Iran. we just gave a ton of money to Iran, even though they're the world's biggest terrorist importer, or the world's biggest terrorist sponsor. So all of this stuff that's going on, and you have to look at it as and they're pretending to be too incompetent to be able to control a border, for example, but they know exactly what's going on. So it seems to me a backdoor route into the United States to bring socialism in, because the Democrats ultimately feel that they don't have enough numbers. They've got to always cheat to win elections. They've always got to figure out a way to game the system. And so they're nervous, and especially now that there's so much bad stuff happening, they're afraid they're going to lose the House and the Senate, and the Republicans are trying to keep them from cheating. And you can decide on your own whether there was cheating in the last election. I mean, obviously there was. The question is how much. So one of the ways that the left has fought to hold on to power was to get rid of Trump. Now, it was only through the interaction with COVID that I think Trump lost, because other than that, he was doing very well. He had a roaring economy. So that they attacked him with this Russia investigation. They attacked him with all kinds of different stuff. I don't want to waste your time on it. You know all about it. But so if there was a dysfunctional reaction to COVID, maybe it was incompetence, maybe it was on purpose, but if you see the possibility that COVID was more than an accident, now Dr. Fauci admits that it's possible that China did create COVID. I mean, there was a couple of letters that initially came out that people cited and said it's just all by accident. China's got to be laughing at us. So this incredible amount of deficit spending the government is doing for no reason, and we've been told by Bloomberg that with the rate of inflation that's starting to go up, in 5 years' time, you could lose half your savings through inflation. So let's talk about the border a little bit. If you saw, and I think I linked it, or I will link it into the story, you'll see that the number of illegals has just skyrocketed. Trump's number of illegals coming in were very, very low. When Biden announced that, or when he won, it spiked, and it's still spiking. But there could be 2 or more million people that come across the border this year. They're apparently not being told to go to court, so they're just here for good. Now, would you believe this? Number one, $500 billion a month made on human and drug smuggling profits to the cartels who control the border, which has got to be a lot of frustration to the military and to the Border Patrol. And they say record numbers of Border Patrol members are putting in to retire. Now, if you got 2 million illegals a year and they're wearing Biden shirts, where are they going to end up, and who are they going to vote for? Well, you know they're going to vote for Biden's party. But think about all of the states where it's on a margin. It's on a very thin margin. You've got Texas. You've got Arizona. You've got Florida. You've got Ohio. There's a number of important states out there, even Michigan. Trump won Wisconsin. So you've got all of these very tight races where the Democrats and the Republicans are kind of evenly divided. Well, put into the United States 2 million or 4 million or 6 million or 8 million illegals. Let's just say Biden keeps doing this. He's breaking the law, by the way, because he's not defending the Constitution. And if you got 8 million new in the next 4 years, if you got 8 million new Democrats, it would be game over. So there is a reason that all of this stuff is happening, and as you've noticed, the gas prices are through the roof. They're over $3. Now, you saw that there was a lot of missiles being shot over to Israel, but what caused that? Well, it didn't happen when Trump was there. Now, John Kerry had told the Iranian prime minister that Israel had attacked Syria 200 times. Now, Syria is the little brother to Iran. So Iran is the one who's giving weapons to Syria. They're also giving weapons to Hamas. We just gave a ton of money to Iran, and they're using it to pay the enemies and weaponize the enemies of Israel and the United States. So, is it all an accident? Well, you know that socialism and Marxism is very, very, in their mind, it's very much like chess. They're playing politics like chess, and they feel like they're going to win. Well, you know, the Republicans and the conservatives are so dopey. They seem like they'll just accept anything. They're afraid to fight. They don't want to get called racist, right? So Joe doesn't know what's going on. Kamala's in charge of the border, but she's hiding. She's never been down there. She's never made a comment about it, except she just laughs. So how about this? All of this stuff fails. The economy is failing. We only got 200,000 jobs in the last report. Why? Because people don't want to go back to work because they're getting paid. So the economy can't grow like it wants to. Then the deficit spending, which causes inflation, but when we have to pay this money back, it's going to be inflationary payments, you know, so maybe that helps us, but it's looking to me like they're trying to sneak in the back door. But the last question I gotta ask you, and put an answer. If it's on YouTube, it's on Buzzsprout, you can't. But if it's in YouTube, give me an answer here. Is it possible, if Fauci made a deal with the Chinese to financially support their weaponizing lab, he wasn't supposed to, but he did it. He did it in a roundabout way. Rand Paul has confirmed that. The Democrats already hated Trump's guts and would do anything, legal or illegal, to get rid of him. And they're highly immoral. Is it possible? I'm just asking you if it's possible that the Democrats cooked up this virus. Well, it's a crazy question, hopefully wrong. But after the exposure of Fauci as a dissembling partisan playing politics with lives and China's work designing weaponized viruses, along with the Democrats' utter, mindless, diabolical hatred of the Dems for Trump, is it really completely out of the question? Stay tuned, sports fans. Well, thanks for tuning in. It's Kelly O'Connell and Kelly O Radio and podcasting at Buzzsprout, but I really appreciate you joining me, and please give me a response. Please add the station, add the site, the channel, and I hope that you have a wonderful day tomorrow. Ciao.